Thanks for this invitation, and thanks for being here. When I was invited to participate to this conference, I immediately understood I have to start by claiming that I'm not an expert at all concerning the topic of this conference. I'm not an expert of surveillance, and my English is rather basic, but let me try to say, nevertheless, a few things. So as a philosopher, I'm quite much interested by this topic because I think surveillance is a crucial topic of Occidental philosophy since 2,600 years. So it's not only like surveillance in digital times, in the digital era, but I think close to this, or familiar to the concept of surveillance is the concept of observation and self-observation. And like you know, okay, this is a crucial topic of philosophy, not only of psychoanalysis, but of course also of psychoanalysis, also in Freud, also in Lacan. There's a kind of the Über-Ich instance, like you know, the super-ego, if this might be the right English translation. And so I'm observing myself constantly. And here, now, today, for example, it's not the first time I'm speaking in front of an audience, but all time I do it, I feel a bit uncomfortable because, not only because I'm observed by at least two cameras here, but there's a kind of audience watching me, looking at me, and there's maybe a kind of attention what I will say, and to be honest, I don't know. This is not a performance, it's a normal intervention. I call it a lecture, and of course I'm a bit intimidated by the brilliance of the talks of my colleagues, and I tried to understand as much as possible of what they said, and there were some concepts, how to say, pop up, if this is right English, like the concept of, in Jimina's talk, of evidence. And this is a concept I'm dealing quite much with in my own work. Évidence, in French, évidence, it's a fundamental concept, like you might know, in phenomenology, in Edmund Husserl, transcendental phenomenology. And the concept of evidence, of course, is related to the concept, to another concept mentioned quite often today, the concept of, and yesterday, the concept of transparency. And so my question, to open up my contribution, my question would be, okay, is it possible to imagine an idea or concept or definition of the human subject without thinking about the search of evidence, the search for the research, or the search for transparency, and the search also for kind of, that was one of the speakers spoke about, Bernard did it, there was a beautiful expression, it was about the dream of infinite knowledge, and of course philosophers would immediately think about Hegel and the concept of absolute knowledge in Hegel. It's a very complicated concept, and we cannot speak about this today. But I would say the problem with this dream of infinite knowledge is that it is infinite. It's an infinite dream of infinite knowledge. That means this is what precisely thinking is. Thinking that, in a way, steps out of the logic of pure empiricism, pure positivism, pure, let's say, naive realism. So my claim here, of course, is that these classical categories, realism on the one hand, idealism on the other hand, are too vulgar, too primitive, not complicated enough, not too, in a way, they make part of a kind of binary thinking, or a way of thinking that is organized by the model of binarité, you understand, and this is precisely, of course, what Jacques Derrida helped us to understand. Deconstruction is the deconstruction of these kind of false alternatives, false options. So if there's something like thinking, the possibility of thinking, I strongly believe in that. So because I understood, we started to talk about, or my colleagues started to talk about are we free or not? Are we totally fucked up in the actual digital, I don't know, surveillance society? Is there space for freedom, or are we nothing but a result, a product of the constituted reality field? So classical thinking, more classical thinking, pointed that out. Like, you know, they didn't spoke so much about surveillance, but they spoke about historicity. Like in the 19th century, they spoke about the simple fact that we all, as human beings, as human subjects, we are structured, determined, affected, influenced in a kind of uncontrollable way by society, by what Jacques Lacan called, if you want, the order of language, the symbolic order, the order of communication, the logos universe we belong to, if we like it or not. And so we are spoken by language, by speaking ourselves. So we are objectified by the language we are speaking. We are objectified and determined and structured and codified by the society. Tout court, the society, the political system we belong to, the culture, of course. Adorno spoke about cultural industry, like you know, and so we are not free, and that's for sure. We are not free, but the question is that everything? That should that be the last word? And what I learned by doing philosophy since a long time now is, and by reading a lot of philosophers, and not only these guys that I mentioned already, Adorno, and I will mention some others, Lacan and some French philosophers, but of course others. What I learned by learning these philosophers is that in philosophy it's never about simple alternatives. It's not about simple oppositions. And there's a kind of dialectics between these false options, these false oppositions. And thinking, the strength of thinking precisely is in this, not to escape this conflictuous dialectics, this negative dialectics, if you want, with Adorno, that does not provide any final solution, the final triumph, the final orgasm, if you want, theoretical orgasm, sometimes connotated with absolute knowledge in Hegel in a more or less false way, I would say. Keeps on being a kind of philosophical phantasm. But nevertheless, what does it mean to think, and why does it make sense continuing thinking, even if we know and we have to learn by thinking itself that the final solution is lacking? And I think because there is this lack, there's this void. Armen Avanesian mentioned or used the concept today of contingency. That is a crucial concept of contemporary philosophy. And contingency simply means non-necessity for the people that are not philosophers here. So that means not fleeing the world like it is. It's not, you know, we all know this image of the philosopher, not, I don't know, like someone who is fleeing in his dreamy or her dreamy world, not having the courage to confront reality like it is. But reality is a kind of fiction. That doesn't mean that it does not exist. It's not, I'm not like speaking with Baudrillard or someone like this. It's not this discourse. But reality is like it is, but it is not necessarily like it is. And I think the concept of contingency that is crucial in nowadays philosophy, at least in nowadays actual contemporary philosophy, this concept might help us to understand that reality, the so-called reality, what we call reality, is, and here I'm paraphrasing, if this word exists in English, Adorno again, from his aesthetic theory, the book that was published in 1970, where he presents a definition art. So many definitions of art in this book. And this book is so fantastic because it's precisely avoiding these false alternatives between or you are critical, or you are in affirmation, or you are realistic, or you are in idealism, and so on. This is not philosophy. This is, I don't know, this is simply a kind of simplification precisely to refuse. And this would be the first definition of thinking, the first definition not only of philosophical thinking that I would like to propose you today is that thinking resists. The concept of resistance was appeared here on this panel, and this optimism, this idea, yeah, but is there any possibility to resist? Can we resist? And you know that Deleuze and Giorgio Agamben today are writing about this concept of resistance, and many people before, of course. This is a classical leftist illusion or not. Yeah, and I would say simply because there's no solution, it mustn't be an illusion, like the same for the concept of freedom. Because freedom does not exist, it makes sense to fight for it, and this is what, and to defend it, to affirm it. So it's always about freedom in objective, in factual non-freedom. And this is what thinking can be. Thinking, I mean, not simply theoretical thinking, theoreia in ancient Greek, you know, this kind of classical term, it's like translated with contemplation, like just looking on the things, like in the theater. It's not about this. Philosophy is a kind of act. Hannah Arendt appeared here in Jimenez's talk, and Hannah Arendt, close to Heidegger, of course, like we know, and insisted very much on thinking as an act, as a kind of activity. So here again, you cannot say, or I'm active, or I'm in theory, or in contemplation. Thinking is not what people think it is normally. Thinking is a kind of activity. Thinking, if there is a kind of resistance, it is the resistance of thinking. But thinking is not, I don't know, a kind of academic practice. I have quite much problems, even if I'm teaching at universities sometimes and nowadays at the moment, but and I'm not against the university, be sure. I'm not against the academic, consistent academic work. I'm not against argument. I'm not against knowledge, production, accumulation. Of course not. But I'm for thinking, and thinking means to confront the inconsistency of our knowledge system. What is our knowledge system? It's not simply, I don't know, what we think about certain topics in a specific field, like in this domain of science or that domain of science and so on. No, I think it goes further. And thinking is the experience of the very inconsistency what I know. What I know, that means what we all know. Thinking means to take the risk, and this demands, of course, a kind of courage to take the risk to confront the simple fact that even if I know, I do not control my own knowledge. So I'm still close here to our topic of surveillance, and because I'm always, like I said at the beginning, and we all are, like we always have to think. Thinking is thinking the very conditions of thinking. Thinking is problematizing, analyzing the instruments, the categories, if you want, Kantian, in a Kantian way of my discourse. So you all know this book, or at least no, I'm sure not everyone read it, but the Critique of Pure Reason, Kritik der reinen Vernunft, this book that Kant published the first time in 1781, and what I like so much in this book is that you can make a whole seminar only on the title of the book. Of course, it makes sense to read the book and these 700, which edition ever, 700, 800 pages of the book to understand the title. But Kritik of Pure Reason, Kritik der reinen Vernunft, there's a kind of genitive construction here. And so the concept of critique, because when we are talking about resistance, we have to talk about critique, how to be critical. Yesterday, I really liked the talk of the guy who did Kia. I didn't knew him, so I learned a lot. And but what I learned is, okay, yeah, to be. He said something like, in which society we would like to live in. So which society would be a society better than the society we are living in now? And I think this is a classical leftist emancipatory project. Now we know since a certain time, and Kant, of course, with the Critique of Pure Reason, with other writings, is in the very center of this huge and not infinite project, the infinite project of emancipation. I know that the concept of emancipation is nowadays a toxic concept, and I like toxic concepts because I think all important concepts in the philosophic tradition, like the concept of freedom, like the concept of equality, the main concept and crucial concepts of the tradition of so-called enlightenment are toxic because, first, equality does not exist, freedom does not exist, love does not exist beyond narcissism, and so on. And democracy, fulfilled democracy does not exist. But it makes sense, like I'm repeating myself, to fight for the impossible, or at least to deal with this problem we are in, that we cannot give up this concept. I do not see any possibility to give up the concept of freedom, even if by claiming in a kind of catastrophical missionary way, by claiming fighting for freedom, a lot of wars nowadays, especially from the US administrations, whatever it is, not only George Bush Jr. and Sr., war is always like the war for freedom, the war for democracy, the war even for equality, and so on. And it's terrible, and we know this. Everybody knows that it's not easy not to accept at all. But at the same time, the question is, how do we deal now with these kind of contaminated concepts? They're contaminated from the very beginning. From the very beginning, all crucial, all fundamental, all elementary concepts of the philosophical tradition are contaminated concepts. And so my proposal is quite simple. Simply by stepping out of the narcissism, and I would call it also, and I don't mean it provocative, my position is totally left, but by interrogating kind of leftist good consciousness attitude that we observe everywhere in contemporary art theory, in political theory in general. It's we have to deal with this contaminated, this poisoned or this toxic material. And this is precisely what I would call thinking here and now. So not thinking in an institute, not thinking simply at a university, not like reducing or neutralizing the concept of thinking or the practice of philosophical thinking by, by being professor in a university and writing another comment on this chapter of, for example, the phenomenology of spirit of Hegel and so on. I do not say that this is not serious work. It exists. This serious work, it exists, it's helpful to understand Hegel, and it's helpful to understand other philosophers and so on. So again, I'm not against universities, I'm not against serious academic work, but the real concept of thinking has to do, in a way, with a kind of infinite, like my first speaker said, interrogation. Resistance also concerning this kind of good consciousness left that is so much so common, I don't know, and so powerful nowadays. The problem with this left is that it is not left anymore. This is my problem with the left, that it is not left, because it's so much in a kind of leftist careerism. It's so comfortable to be, I don't know, on the right side. And here I would simply claim, I do not believe in the right side. I'm beyond theology here, beyond religion, beyond metaphysics. if this is possible. I do not believe, by the way, that it is possible. And so it's a problematic and contaminated discourse that I'm presenting you, and these few ideas that I'm proposing you are I'm absolutely aware that my position is not safe and it's not the right position. It's simply the claim for let's continue dealing with this contaminated material that reality is. Reality in general, not only reality structured by ideas, by ideologies. It would be so nice to make a clear distinction between ideology on the one hand, or ideology, I don't know how you say in English, ideology, I say, and ideas. And it would be so nice to have a clear, I don't know, criterion to make this differentiation. And so I don't have it. And who has it, by the way? Maybe we can talk later. I don't have, and I never read or a philosophical position that convinced me having it. So it's always about production of ideology against ideology. And this is a bit the problem, the operatic situation, the dialectic situation, if you want, in which we are. So if we would have time, but I'm not an expert at all, we would have to talk about Bertolt Brecht, we would have to talk about Heiner Müller, the playwright, German playwright after Bertolt Brecht, and very much insisting on the impossibility of innocence, political innocence. And that is not a plaidoyer, how to say, an affirmation of, I don't know, of opportunism or simple, stupid, right-wing affirmation and so on. Again, it would be so nice to say there's no affirmation in critique. Critique is based on affirmation. The whole late Wittgenstein is dealing with that. And if you haven't read this, I give a recommendation. The fragments on certainty, on the concept of certainty, that is crucial for our discourse here. Certitudo in Latin, of course, and you know that René Descartes established this concept of certitudo and certitudo or certainty at the beginning of, let's say, modernity, and if we can very simplify it, I'm sorry, call this, Descartes is born in 1596 and died in 1650. The concept of certainty is very much interrogated by Ludwig Wittgenstein, simply by claiming in his last writings that our certainties, he does not say that there are no certainties. He's not saying that there is no more or less consistent narrative, that there's no narrative at all, that we are like totally fucked up in, I don't know, in the desert. But no, this is a precise function of these narratives and these certainties, just to help us to survive a contact, a primordial contact, a contact that already like takes place, that is constitutive for our human reality. And that means our reality, that means our realities, our society, what we call the society, what we call the culture, what we call a political system, and so on. And it looks like that we need that. So surveillance, to come back to our topic, surveillance, I think it looks like that that we are looking for surveillance, and looks like that we are enjoying observation, and looks like that our narcissism, and not only the Facebook narcissism, but the narcissism since a long time, from Plato to Facebook. So we are ready to, I don't know, to be observed. There was a beautiful introduction of the concept by what is the guy, Bernard, exposition, yeah. We are ready, and it's also a crucial concept in a different way in Jean-Luc Nancy, one of the contemporary French philosophers that I recommend to read if you haven't started to read him. And because Nancy also helps us to understand how surviving the death of God. This is the situation in which we are, and since a long time, of course. And so when Nietzsche claimed, and Nietzsche died in 19, like you know, and when Nietzsche opened up the 20th century philosophy, now it's 115 years later, at least, and the writings of Nietzsche, of course, he wrote them before, and he opened up the contemporary, let's say, the space of contemporary philosophy by simply claiming God is dead. But God is dead is not the sense of the sentence, of course. It's not God is dead, okay, no problem, and now we are like successful atheists. That does not work. And Nietzsche's claim is totally different. Nietzsche precisely says God is dead, and we just continue if nothing happens. So we're looking for substitutes for the dead God, and an NSA is, I think, a good substitute. At least someone is looking, watching us, and and our good leftist consciousness demands, I don't know, that it would be so nice to say, okay, no, I'm realist, I'm positivist, I'm materialist, I'm in the here and now, I'm inhabiting the sphere of pure immanence. This is a vulgar, I don't know, Deleuzianism. It's not Deleuze, because so you cannot substitute transcendence by immanence. So this is now ontology, but ontology as a kind of historic ontology, of course, not ontology in the sense of idealistic phantasms, not in this sense. That never existed, not in Hegel, nowhere. So this is something I'm claiming quite often, because Hegel is in a way accused to be the philosopher of absolute idealism, and Hegel's the one, he said it himself, he defined his position as absolute idealism, but that does not mean at all that he's flying away, not ready to confront reality like it is. He's simply not accepting the narrative called reality. So when Adorno says in the aesthetic theory, I come back to the quote that I didn't mention, when he gives his definition of art, claiming that art is a promise of happiness that is not kept. When I read this many years ago, the first time, I said to myself, yeah, I'm interested in art more or less, but why? Because art has to do with so-called reality. So then I said to myself, okay, I would like to make a kind of paraphrase of this by claiming that not art is the promise of happiness that is not kept, but reality is a promise of consistency that is broken, a broken concept, a broken promise of consistency. This is a situation in which we are. I would say a bit, again, simplified, or a lot of simplification. I'm sorry, but this is a price of communication, simplification. And but consistency, inconsistency are words. I'm coming to my end. That I'm very much interested in, and I think, yeah, to survive the death of God, the death of God means simply to break up with the lot, or no, in a more, let's say, reflected way. To survive and to deal with the factual death of God means to analyze what I would like to call the logic of substitution, substitutional logic. Okay, sorry for my bad English. You understand? We're looking for substitutions. So if it's God is dead, okay, no problem, but at least there's romantic love. If there's no romantic love, or before there's art. If art nowadays, okay, becomes ideological issue and problem, and okay, then let's see, economy took over, you know. So creation or creatio ex nihilo is something that in financial metaphysics still survived. So God survived there in the financial sector of our economy, and so on. So, but and if you do not believe in money, at least you have a pet. And so a cat or a dog or something, but we all need, it looks like that we are all, nobody is ready to be alone, to be fucked up in freedom, like I would say in the sense of, that would be my interpretation of Sartre, nous sommes condamnés à être libres. We are condemned to be free. That means that is the growing desert Nietzsche spoke about. God is dead. The desert is growing. There's void. There's contingency. There's nothing. Nobody is observing me. There's even no, I don't know, punition. Sorry, you know. and there's nobody who cares about me. And I think, yeah, this is what I would like to call emancipation and Tukur thinking, just to deal with the simple fact the pet will not help you to survive the death of God, and do it without substitute as much as possible. Continue thinking. I believe in the power of thinking. Not, I hope, not in a dreamy way and in a kind of idealistic way and so on. I mean, really, thinking means analyzing the situation I'm in, yeah, and with a kind of cold view, with Brecht and Heiner Müller, Nietzsche, just to look, how is it? And then to make the best out of the situation. That means, yeah, continuing dreaming without, and continuing having kind of hope for the for the possibility of the reformation or reformation of the constituted reality field of our world. It's possible, of course, and there are a lot of examples, but we will not change the whole thing from now to tomorrow. This is narcissism, to think, I want it now, immediately, I want everything, and I want it now. These are kids in the supermarket, chocolate and candies, and that's not possible. Or chocolate, or candies, or nothing. Yeah, yeah. Okay. No questions?
No. No. Thanks so much.